I want to know what your lockdown low has been. At what point over the last 18 months did you get to that point where you're like, I just need to get out of the house? Was it when you'd rearranged your bedroom the third time and you still weren't happy with it, but it was something to do? Was it when your phone told you, your screen time has gone up by 317%, are you okay? Or like Lizzie, where you delete TikTok because your screen time has gone crazy. I did that at least once per lockdown, so you're okay. For me, I think it was when there was a day I cleaned out my cutlery drawer before 9 a.m. And then I was like, what do I do with the rest of my day? And it was at that point I was like, lockdown, I'm done with you. But let's just be real with each other. It's been a really hard year. It's been a year that we weren't expecting. We went into last September thinking, this is going to be great. Restrictions are going to go down. It's going to be amazing. And that's not the year that we got. It's been a year where we've missed out on a lot of things. You might have missed out on birthday parties or weddings or sports. You missed out on a lot of school at some point. We've had to cancel plans. We've had to postpone plans. You've had to be ready to isolate at a moment's notice. Like, we've never had to do that before. And I'm guessing that for some of us, myself included, that we're just tired. Is anyone else feeling that? We're just tired of all of this? Yeah, a good few hands. And on top of that, it's now the end of term. But despite all of that, we can look back on this year with our heads held high because we have overcome. We've made it to the end. We've made it to the last youth church of the year. And that is something to celebrate. We've adjusted to new ways of doing school, new ways of doing youth, new ways of doing church, new ways of doing life. And we're still here. Most of us are still smiling behind your masks, I'm assuming. And we've made it. But what do we do now? We're going to look at the Bible for a bit of guidance. And we're going to look at 2 Corinthians 4, verses 8 to 10, which will appear on the screen. It says this: "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body." And these verses, I think, quite aptly describe this year. It's been really tough, but we've also had the strength to get through it. It says in verse 8 that we were pressed on every side, but not crushed. But what does that even actually mean? It means that we've been through a lot. It means that we can have restrictions. It means that we can have difficulties and we can have hardships. But those things are not powerful enough to crush us. We are stronger than that. Why? Because we have Jesus in us. And we have the armor of God protecting us. It says in Ephesians 6, verse 10 to 11, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand." And when we do that, that means that we might be hard-pressed, but we are not crushed. It goes on to say that we are perplexed, but not in despair. It's been a really confusing year, right? Anyone else got confused at any point for this year? Don't know what's going to happen next. Don't know what COVID's going to do. Don't know what the restrictions even mean. Yeah, pretty much every hand. We are perplexed, but this verse tells us we are not in despair. And why? Because we know the one who's in control. It goes on, it says, "We may be persecuted, but we are not abandoned." You might have felt persecuted this year. You might have had friends come up to you and be like, "You're a Christian. I've got a question for you. Where's God in all of this?" And in that moment, you might have felt really persecuted and not known how to answer. But this verse tells us that we are not abandoned. Even when we feel persecuted, even when we don't know how to stand up, we are not abandoned. God doesn't leave us. God has not forgotten you. God hasn't prioritized anyone else over you. You are still his number one, and he still loves you. Even when you're cleaning your cutlery drawer before 9 a.m., he still loves you in that moment and has not abandoned you. And finally, our passage tells us that we might be struck down, but we are not destroyed. We might be really tired. Pretty much everyone put their hand up to say they're tired. We might just be a bit battered, but we are still here. So I want to tell you this morning that however this year has been for you, whether it's been really hard physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, any other Lee that you can come up with, you are not destroyed. You are here today. And that is something worth celebrating. That really is something worth celebrating. But how did we make it through? And our passage answers that for us as well. It said, because we have the life of Jesus in us, because we carry around Jesus wherever we go, we carry that sacrifice that he made for us. We are living proof of the power of God. And because we have Jesus in us, that's how we make it through rough years and rough things like COVID. Now, what I'm about to say might be difficult to comprehend, especially if you're feeling really tired and confused. God has been in control this whole time. God has been in control this whole time. And maybe it wasn't a friend that asked that question of, well, where is God in all of this? Maybe that was you. And I want to tell you this morning that that's okay. It's okay to ask those questions of God. God doesn't mind. The Bible is full of people asking questions. Even Moses at one point questioned God's choices. Like, it's okay to question God. It doesn't mean God isn't working. It just means we can't see it. Or much more likely, it means that we just don't understand it. God sees a much bigger picture than we could ever manage. We don't need to hide those feelings from God. We can be honest with him and tell him we're struggling. But whilst we ask those questions, we can also celebrate. Because we have not been crushed. We are not in despair. We have not been destroyed. And most certainly, we have not been abandoned. God has been with us and remains with us. So what do we do with that? We're going to look at another bit of the Bible. I'm just going to chuck lots of Bible in here so that you can go a good 6 weeks without youth church and you'll be okay. We're going to look at Lamentations 3, verse 22 to 24, which says this. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. God's mercies are new every single morning. But again, what does that even mean? It means that every morning we can see new mercies that God has placed in our lives. There are more things to be thankful for. Every day, every morning. More things that we don't deserve. And some translations will, instead of saying mercies, will say compassions. God's compassions are new every morning. And we get a new morning every single day. Tomorrow might feel like an especially new morning when restrictions are eased a little bit. And we go into a brand new season. We can be a bit sad because there's no youth or youth church for a while. But on the whole, it's a new season that we can step into, full of new mercies, new compassions. Our verse told us that the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. If you were to look up steadfast in the Oxford English Dictionary, or Google, it will tell you that steadfast means resolutely or dutifully firm and unwavering. So God's love is unwavering. That means even in COVID, God's love remains unwavering and firm. Whatever you go through, whatever you do, whatever happens to you, whatever your choices, whatever your questions, God's love is unwavering. It's dutifully firm, and it remains. Our verse says it never ceases. It doesn't say, it probably won't stop. It doesn't say, it looks like this could be around for a while. It says, it never ceases. His mercies never end. God's compassion and forgiveness towards you will never, ever end. There's always more to be thankful for, more opportunities to see God working in your life, more opportunities to see how much God loves you. And if this is new every morning, if these mercies are new every morning, new compassions, and they are steadfast, and his love never ceases, and it just goes on and on and on and on, then mathematically speaking, it's just increasing and increasing, and there's always more and more and more that we can be thankful for. We can go into each day, each new season, knowing and certain that we are loved and we are safe. God is in control, that we won't be crushed, that we won't be abandoned, we won't be in despair or destroyed. The verse goes on to say, "Great is your faithfulness." We can look back and see all of the things God has done for us. You've probably, at some point in your life, been in a situation where you've thought, I just don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't even know how I'm going to make it through the day. But the fact that you're here today means that every time you've thought that, you've made it through. There's always things that we can be thankful that God has done for us. Even at the very beginning of God dying on a cross. Even if that's all you can think of, then that's something to be thankful for. He is faithful, he is in control, and he has a plan. And then our verse says, therefore. And when the Bible says therefore, it usually means, I've told you a lot of things, and then this is what I want you to do with it. It usually means, listen up, tune back in, this is the important bit. So, listen up, tune back in, this is the important bit. It says, therefore, I will hope in him. And that is our what's next. That is what we do. Because he is faithful, because we are not crushed, because we are not perplexed, because we are not in despair, because we have not been abandoned, but because he is steadfast, because that steadfast love never, ever ceases, because his mercies never end, because his compassions are new every morning, and because his faithfulness is great. Because of all of these things, therefore, we can hope in him. Hope is powerful. Hope is an unspoken prayer of faith to say that we trust in what God is doing and we believe that his goodness will come through. Hope is being expectant of a God we know we can trust. We have a whole summer ahead of us. You guys have got 6 weeks of relative freedom. A whole year starting in September. A whole season of new mercies and new compassions. And it's a season that we can go into knowing the steadfast love of God, certain that we are safe and certain that God is in control. So today the challenge I've got for you is to accept that love of God as your own and step forward in hope. Hope for the future, hope for next year, hope for the summer, hope for tomorrow. Hope is our what's next. Amen.